On today's episode, I'll discuss Seth Jones' struggles while also dishing out my midseason grades.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Do me a quick favor, please. Make sure you hit that like button. Jump in the comment section down below as well to let me know your reaction to last night's sloppy loss to the Calgary Flames and what grade you would give Blackhawks forward Connor Bedard for his first half of the season. Subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube if you haven't done so already. 100% free, won't cost you anything, and really does help me out in a huge way as I'm closing in on my goal of 2,000 subscribers. And last but certainly not least, do got to give a shout out to today's sponsor, which is FanDuel. If you're not already a member, got to go and check out FanDuel.com right now to win $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Third consecutive loss and 11th in the past 16 games for our Blackhawks last night, falling 5-2 to the Calgary Flames, their third loss in as many contests against the Flames now this season. And it was another sloppy showing right from the get-go. For just the third time this year, the Blackhawks surrendered 3 goals in the opening 20 minutes to put themselves behind the 8 ball early. However, they did have a little bit of life and an opportunity to claw their way back into the game during the midway point as Martin Pospisil, as he usually does, was his usual goon self and got himself ejected for boarding Taylor Hall in the second period. The Hawks capitalized on the ensuing power play as Mr. Connor Bedard snapped home his 12th goal of the season, also picking up his 100th career NHL point in the process. Another congratulations to Connor Bedard, doing so in just 112 games time and becoming just the 24th teenager in NHL history to record 100 points, and did so in the fewest games since Sidney Crosby way back in 2005-2006, the same amount of games that it took Austin Matthews, who, in case you live under a rock, is a pretty darn good hockey player for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Did it much faster than both Nathan MacKinnon and Jack Hughes, who, if you also live under a rock, are very special talents. Again, as I prefaced yesterday, Connor Bedard is damn good. Do not let anyone else tell you otherwise. Unfortunately, the fun for the Blackhawks wouldn't last very long as the Flames would go on to respond with a shorthanded tally of their own, giving them a 3-goal advantage once again and kind of putting the dagger in the Blackhawks there when it felt like they had a little bit of life. That wound up being the final 5-2 last night at the United Center. First takeaway that I got to get to, though, Blackhawks fans, is undoubtedly the struggles that Seth Jones continues to go through since returning from injury. It's now been 11 games since he's been back from that right foot problem that forced him to miss a little bit over a month. And while offensively, he has chipped in for 1 goal and 4 assists for 5 points in those 11 games, he's been an absolute liability in his own zone, and last night was kind of the culmination of it all. And truthfully, it might have been his worst game as a member of the Blackhawks since joining them ahead of the 2021-2022 campaign. Jones was -4 last night against the Flames, directly responsible for 3 of those 4 goals, including the horrendous turnover that he made while the Blackhawks were on the power play just moments after Connor Bedard scored the goal to cut their deficit to 2. Finally, you get some life in the United Center, and Jones goes and throws a muffin like that, leading to a shorthanded tally for the Flames, cutting all the momentum the Blackhawks had. And as a result, Seth Jones wound up playing not only his lowest ice time as a member of the Blackhawks was 16 minutes and 19 seconds, it was also the lowest ice time he's played in a regular season game since December of 2016, when he was a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And he's only played fewer than 20 minutes 4 times in almost 4 seasons now with the Blackhawks. None of them have been fewer than 18 minutes like we saw out of Jones last night. He wound up being benched for the final 6 minutes of the opening 20 minutes and only played 4 minutes and 58 seconds in the final frame. And taking a look at his analytics, his expected goals for percentage has been absolutely putrid in these 11 games since returning. He's had a below 40% XGF in 9 of those 11 games, below 50 in 10 of them, and it's even been below 30% in 4 of those 11 games as well. And the Blackhawks have been outchanced 117-71 with Seth Jones on the ice during those 11 games, and have been out high danger chanced 54-28 as well. And looking at the box score last night, not only was Jones a liability, but it seemed like the effort might have been a little bit lackadaisical as well. He was the only Blackhawks defenseman to not record a shot on goal, was also the only Hawks defenseman to record fewer than 2 block shots, and also was a team worst with a -4 plus-minus rating. And what Jones is giving the Blackhawks right now simply isn't good enough. And I feel like part of it is him still struggling to find out how to play and exactly how to go about things with Anders Sorensen as the interim head coach, because whether you feel the same way or not, I know Seth Jones is not a fan favorite here in Chicago because of his price tag, but regardless of how you feel about Seth Jones, he was pretty solid these last 2 years. Not worth the price tag that he's paid, but at the end of the day, wasn't his fault that Stan Bowman gave him that check to go and sign his name on. Yeah, I know a lot of fans are always going to point the finger at him, but really we should all be mad at Stan Bowman, not Seth Jones, because all of us would sign that contract. And in the first half of the season, prior to the injury, I thought he was playing pretty well. And when I dove through some of his numbers yesterday, I mentioned that they still look pretty good despite him having an awful stretch since returning from injury, suggesting that he was pretty good in the first half of the season when he was healthy. But make no mistake about it, since he's returned under Anders Sorensen, he has not been the same defenseman whatsoever. And honestly, Blackhawks fans, he's looked like their worst defenseman and hasn't even played like an NHL caliber guy. And it's putting this coaching staff in a really tough spot, because obviously with Jones's contract and the no movement clause, there's real limited options here. The only real thing the Blackhawks can do is scratch Seth Jones to kind of give him a wake-up call, even though it feels like he's well aware that his play isn't good enough right now. I mean, he said he was going to be available for a media session after the Winter Classic. That didn't happen. Wasn't available to talk to the media last night. At the end of the day, Seth, you kind of got to take accountability here, especially someone who wears a letter for this Blackhawks team. And listen, I know it's tough to go and face the media, especially when you've been part of this Blackhawks team that hasn't won a whole heck of a lot of games since you joined. And that wasn't what you signed up for. I understand that. And that's why I think the Blackhawks have been very hesitant to critique Seth Jones and to throw him under the bus when he has had these type of poor stretches over these last few years, because there's no real upside to it, because the Blackhawks don't really have anything they can do with Seth Jones except hope that he kind of figures it out and plays better. It's almost like in a sense, what's going on in Vancouver right now with Pettersson and JT Miller. There's so much complications involving both of those players. You just kind of have to hope they figure it out and get better moving forward, and they just kind of fix that turmoil. That's kind of the same thing with Seth Jones here, right? You're probably going to scratch him if I had to guess. I mean, we've seen Taylor Hall scratch this year. I know this was all under Luke Richardson, but at some point in time, a message needs to be sent. And Seth Jones, as I just mentioned, has been playing like the Blackhawks' worst defenseman since returning from injury. We know Seth Jones is capable, whether you like him or not. He is the most talented defenseman on this Blackhawks blue line still, even with Alex Vlasic having a nice boost in his offensive game over these last couple of years. But what he's giving us right now simply isn't good enough, and the message needs to be sent. I would not be surprised to see Seth Jones scratched for the first time as a member of the Blackhawks, either on Thursday against the Nashville Predators, which is really tough, considering that's the team that drafted him. However, TJ Brodie was just scratched last night against a team he played a long time for in the Calgary Flames. So sometimes you got to make these tough decisions when A, the effort doesn't seem to be good enough, and B, the execution for what we know Seth Jones can provide hasn't been up to his expectations. So feels like something's got to give there. Blackhawks don't really have any other thing they can do except, hope Seth just kind of gets over the shell and performs better. But they need more out of him. And it's really concerning when you need someone who plays 20, 25 minutes per game on the back end, and he doesn't even look like he's capable being an NHL defenseman. Puts the rest of your decor and your team in a really peculiar spot. We'll see what winds up giving with Seth Jones, but undoubtedly his worst game, in my opinion, as a member of the Blackhawks last night against the Calgary Flames. Bad decisions, bad turnovers, lack of physicality, lack of aggression, lack of assertiveness. It's certainly concerning. We'll see what winds up going down with Jones. We'll see if he winds up being scratched on Thursday against the Nashville Predators, but there is everything I have from another sloppy loss from the Blackhawks last night. 3 in a row now for them as they fall 5-2 to the Calgary Flames. Coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, it's time for me to start dishing out some of my midseason grades. Real quick, though, I do need to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are just simply better with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can start the postseason strong with $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. Yes, you heard me right. It's not if your first $5 bet wins or loses anymore. No, it's $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to now pick up a W. Personally, I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. But FanDuel also has bets for player props, money lines, game specials, and so much more. To go and take advantage of this amazing offer that FanDuel is giving right now, be sure to visit FanDuel.com in order to join today. Again, that's FanDuel.com for your chance to win $200 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. So make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Segment 2, time to get into my midseason grades as the Blackhawks have pushed their way into the second half of the 2024-2025 regular season. And as a reminder, jump in the comment section right now to let me know what grade you give Connor Bedard for his first half of the season, as well as Alex Vlasic, Teuvo Teravainen, Taylor Hall. Make sure to react to my grades that I give out and share your opinions if some of my grades are too high, too low. If you have a spicy take or feel a certain way about one of my grades, make sure to jump in the comment section and let me know right now as well. To kick things off, though, as I did yesterday with my Blackhawks Deep Dive 4.0, and again, a reminder to go and check out Blackhawks Deep Dive 4.0 as I went through all the nitty-gritty analytics and stats for every single Blackhawks player in the first half of the season to get a little bit better of an understanding of how they fared so far this year. Beginning with the forwards, though, like I did yesterday, we got to begin with number 98, Connor Bedard, picking up his 100th career point last night. Wish it would have came in better fashion, though, as he was pretty down bad following the Blackhawks loss, which I'll talk about in segment 3. But through 44 games now this year, Connor Bedard has 12 goals, a team high 27 assists, and of course leads the team with 39 points. He scored his 5th power play goal of the season last night. Does only have 7 even strength goals in 44 games. That's where I would probably critique Bedard the most, as well as his lack of success or even taking a step at the faceoff dot. And as I mentioned yesterday, other than that, I would say the biggest weakness for Connor Bedard is he's just still a little soft on the puck. It's clear he's an undersized forward who's still trying to figure out how to maneuver his way around the ice against grown men, going up against bigger players as a small type of guy. He's not having the same type of success that he was at the junior level, deking through opponents and being able to rely upon himself to create space to get a shot off. Those are probably the things that I've noticed that Bedard has struggled the most at. But again, for a kid who has had to rely on his playmaking, which wasn't his #1 asset coming into the league because of a lack of goal scoring, he also has not had a very good supporting cast whatsoever, which is something I will actually be talking about later on in this week, going through some of the most recent teenagers to pot 100 points, some of their supporting cast to help them get to that metric before turning 20 years of age. Connor Bedard has not had a lot of help since stepping onto the Blackhawks scene. Nearly a point per game player this year, 100 points in 112 career NHL games. I know the goal scoring has been down from what we probably were expecting Bedard to do at the NHL level. I'm still super thrilled with his development, the way that he's gone about himself in this really dreadful situation without having a lot of help and consistently losing. And I don't see any reason to believe why Connor Bedard won't continue to make strides in his game as he continues to get older get more experience, and knock on wood, the Blackhawks should hopefully be giving him more of a supporting cast moving forward. To sum it up, I'm going to give Connor Bedard an A- for his performance in the first half of the regular season. Make sure to jump in the comment section down below. Let me know. Is that too high? Is that too low? Is that right on for Connor Bedard? I'm giving him an A- for his first half of the season. Next, we go to Teuvo Teravainen, second leading scorer for the Blackhawks, 44 games, 10 goals, 21 assists for 31 points. Does have 18 points over his last 14 games, has really picked it up here as of late. Still, though, only 5 even-strength goals on the year. Does only have, what is that? He has 18, is that 14 even-strength points on the season? 13 even-strength points on the season still, as his assist last night to extend his point streak to 4 games came on the man advantage. He has as many power play goals as he does even-strength goals this year. There has been good out of Teuvo Teravainen. It's just been the lack of consistency that has kind of drove me crazy. And it feels like he's one of those guys who's either going to be a ghost or he's going to give you a 2-point performance. There's like no in between. I do like the consistency starting to show up a little bit here around the midway point, but we still need more consistency out of Teuvo Teravainen for what we know he's capable of and what we paid him in the offseason. I'm going to give Teuvo Teravainen a B- for his performance in the first half. Next, we got Ryan Donato, played in 42 of the 44 games, 13 goals, good for second on the Blackhawks, along with 11 assists, 24 points, third leading scorer, which I don't think anyone thought they would be saying about Ryan Donato at the midway point of the season. Also is only a -5 in terms of plus-minus, which is notable for these Blackhawks. 12 of his 13 goals, by the way, have come from the even-strength variety, leads the team in shots on goal, second in hits, averaging 14 minutes and 50 seconds of time on ice. Kind of a jack-of-all-trades type of guy. We've seen him on the top line. We've seen him on the fourth line. We've seen him on the power play. He's been out there on the penalty kill from time to time. All across the board, Ryan Donato has been that guy for the Blackhawks. And I would not be surprised if there are a lot of suitors calling the Hawks come trade deadline time. I'm going to give Ryan Donato an A for his performance in the first half of the season. Considering his expectations and what he did for this team last year, I'm thrilled with what we've gotten out of Ryan Donato. Wish we kind of had 11 other Ryan Donatos out there on the ice. Next, we got Taylor Hall, 42 games played, 8 goals, 14 assists, 22 points, tied for fourth in points on the Blackhawks. 7 of his 8 goals have come from the even strength variety, averaging 15 minutes and 11 seconds of time on ice. Taylor Hall, kind of like Teuvo Teravainen, has had that lack of consistency. There's been good games, but he hasn't even been as consistent as Teuvo Teravainen. So I feel like I can't give Taylor Hall as good of a grade as I gave Teuvo, as I probably had maybe not bigger expectations for Hall coming off of a torn ACL, but very similar expectations for both of those guys in a top 6 role. Yes, there have been good games, but there have been far too many where they also didn't make an impact. I'm going to give Taylor Hall a C. Next, we got Tyler Bertuzzi, 44 games played, 14 goals, 8 assists, 22 points, tied with Hall for fourth in points on the Blackhawks. -21 plus minus. He is an absolute liability defensively, but his goal scoring is so needed in this offense. 8 power play goals, 6 even strength goals, while averaging 15 minutes and 56 seconds of time on ice. His defense is absolutely concerning. As I talked about yesterday, but since being moved up with Bedard, he finally has established a top line mate for him. He's really clicked. The goal scoring has turned around. And for someone who's kind of a notorious slow starter, he has found his footing. I hope that's something that he can shed here with the Blackhawks. I'm going to give Tyler Bertuzzi a B. Maybe that isn't fair to give him a B and Taylor Hall a C. But at least Bert is living up to the expectations in the goal-scoring category. Next, we got Nick Foligno, 43 games played, has the captain, 11 goals, 8 assists, 19 points. 9 of his 11 goals have come from the even-strength variety, averaging 16 minutes and 52 seconds of time on ice. I mentioned the analytics yesterday. The defensive numbers have really taken a dip, particularly since Anders Sorensen has stepped in. There are times where, he's a really good leader. Defensively, hasn't been there with what I wanted and what he did last year and earlier this season, but still, I don't really know how I can knock Nick Foligno at his age for like a lack of stats. I'm going to give Nick Foligno a B-. Next, we got Jason Dickinson, 43 games played, 7 goals, 7 assists, 14 points, -4 plus-minus rating, which is certainly notable for the role that he plays in going up against every opposing team's top offensive line. All 7 of his goals have come from the even strength variety, still shooting like a certified goal scorer, averaging 16 minutes and 7 seconds of time on ice. Jason Dickinson does not have a sexy job, and he'll never get the true credit that he deserves for it, especially on a bad Blackhawks team where you don't really recognize how good a guy like Dickinson truly is. I'm going to give him a B for his performance, the B minus for his performance this year, just because the goal scoring has taken a little bit of a step back. Even though I knew that was going to be hard for him to repeat, I'll give Dickinson a B minus, just like Nick Foligno. Next, we got Ilya Mikheyev, 42 games played, 8 goals, 6 assists, 14 points, team high, +3 plus-minus rating. 7 of his 8 goals have come from the even strength variety. The only shorthanded goal for the Blackhawks this year has actually handled himself pretty well since being on the top line for a guy who is not a top line player. He's got good wheels, and I think that's much needed in this forward group and helps get Connor Bedard more puck touches. And the offense has started to come around, and on a defensive basis, Ilya Mikheyev is one of the better defensive forwards that the Blackhawks have. I've been pretty surprised with what he's done over the last month or so. I'm going to give Ilya Mikheyev a B. Next, we got Lukas Reichel, 37 games played, 3 goals, 9 assists, 12 points, -7 plus-minus rating. Did pick up a nice primary assist last night to set up Louis Crevier for his second NHL goal. That's actually Reichel's 6th point now in 8 career games against the Calgary Flames, just for whatever reason, seems to do a lot of good work against them. Averaging, though, only 12 minutes and 17 seconds of time on ice. I think the goal scoring and only having 3 goals in 37 games on the year, that to me is probably the biggest disappointment that I have for Reichel. But again, how can I knock him too much when I feel like the Blackhawks have completely mismanaged and misutilized him this season and really have not given him an opportunity whatsoever? Love to see him in these last couple of games playing with Frank Nazar and Colton Dach. That line performed, I don't want to say much better, but at least they made an impact in the opening 20 minutes against the Flames as opposed to basically not touching the puck against the Edmonton Oilers. Hopefully Reichel will continue to stay there. I think that's a much better spot for him than with Pat Maroon and Craig Smith, who's not even in the lineup right now due to a back injury. And that was really the guy who I thought Reichel connected the best with down on that 4th line. So hopefully he gets more of a chance here, as this is another kind of wasted season for the Blackhawks. 12 points, 37 games. There is some of it where Lukas Reichel needs to be better himself, and when he gets into the offensive zone, his consistency, holding on to the puck, and making good decisions from then on, he does still need work in those areas. I just don't know how I could critique him too hard when I feel like he's being mismanaged. I'm going to give Lukas Reichel a C+. Next, we got Craig Smith, 30 games played, 6 goals, 5 assists, 11 points. Been out as of late due to a back injury. 5 of his 6 goals have come from the even strength variety, averaging just 11 minutes and 41 seconds of time on ice. I'll tell you what, I was really surprised, though, by the amount of speed that Craig Smith still has in his game at this stage of his career. And that's why I think he worked well with Lukas Reichel, because those two can kind of do some things together in transition, whereas Pat Maroon kind of operates like he has cement in his pants. So I've been happy with Craig Smith. Hasn't been as consistent over the last month and a half. He got off to a really strong start to his Blackhawks tenure. I'm still going to give him a B-. Next, we got Pat Maroon, 39 games played, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points. Both of his goals have come from the even strength variety. Doesn't play on the man advantage much, but for whatever reason, Luke Richardson gave him more of a power play look than Lukas Reichel. That made absolutely no sense. Big Rig, he's done what I expected him to do since coming on here. I'm sure it's not a very fun time for him, as he's used to contending for Stanley Cups and not being at the bottom of the NHL standings. I'm just going to give Pat Maroon a flat C. And then rounding things out with the Blackhawks forward group, we got Philip Kurashev, who looks like he could be on his final days potentially as a member of the Blackhawks, as Frank Saravalli on CHSN last night prior to the Blackhawks game said he's a guy who could be destined for waivers if he doesn't figure it out. 31 games played, 3 goals, 2 assists, 5 points in 31 games for Philip Kurashev this year. -28 plus-minus rating, only 2 even strength goals in 31 games played, 15 minutes and 5 seconds of time on ice. Has handled his own at the faceoff dot pretty well for a guy who I don't believe is a center iceman. But from all metrics, all numbers, I don't know how you can't give Philip Kurashev an F, especially for the effort level that he just showed the last time he got an opportunity to return to the Blackhawks lineup against the Red Wings. Absolutely pitiful, man. That's the type of stuff that we can't have. Philip Kurashev, absolutely the worst Blackhawks forward in the first half, deserving of an F. Are my grades for the Blackhawks forwards in the first half of the season. But don't go anywhere, Blackhawks fans, because coming up in just a moment, I still have to turn things over and take a look at all of the Blackhawks defensemen. But first, I need to talk to you all real quick about Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. And Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and also helps lower your bills so you can continue to grow your savings. And Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved over $500 million worth of canceled subscriptions total, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So what are you waiting for? Go and cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Make sure to go and check out rocketmoney.com/lockedon right now. Again, that's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Just wanted to say thank you real quick to everyone who made Locked On Blackhawks your very first listen here to start off your day. For your second listen, make sure to go and check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast so that you can become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. And you can easily find the link to Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you may be listening to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 3, before I close things out on today's episode, do still got to take a look at the Blackhawks defensemen in the first half of the season, starting with Alex Vlasic. 44 games played for Vlasic, 2 goals, 15 assists, 17 points, already giving him a new career high in that metric. Minus 11 plus-minus rating has kind of taken a dip, again, like Seth Jones and really this Blackhawks defense as a whole since Anders Sorensen has taken over. 1 power play goal, 1 even-strength goal for Alex Vlasic, averaging 23 minutes and 42 seconds of time on ice, top 25 in the NHL. 84 block shots, has chipped in for 28 hits, has a team-high 27 takeaways as well. I think you got to be ecstatic about the development of Alex Vlasic since he's first stepped onto the scene. The speed, the offense, much higher upside in both of those areas than I ever thought were imaginable when they selected this kid in the second round back in 2019. I knew he was capable of being a defensive stalwart because of that frame, because of that long reach. And while he's not the most physical defenseman, there are so many examples night in and night out of Alex Vlasic utilizing his body in strategic ways. Because he knows he has such a big frame, separating himself, turning his back to give himself a little bit more space to get the puck over to his teammate, his defensive partner, out of harm's way. He is so smart in using his body and his stick to break up plays. The offense, of course, is growing. Maybe even a power play 2 type of offensive upside in Alex Vlasic. I don't know with all the Blackhawks offensive defensemen if that's going to be his role down the road. What I'm getting to, though, is Alex Vlasic is molding together into a very spectacular all-around defenseman for 23 years of age. He has kind of hit some bumps in the road, like I mentioned, since Anders Sorensen has taken over. It's been unfortunate that the Blackhawks kind of strength of their team, aside from the penalty kill, the defense, and guys like Vlasic and Foligno and Dickinson haven't been as strong defensively as they kind of previously were in their Blackhawks tenure, but still, Alex Vlasic has been outstanding for the Chicago Blackhawks this year. Really stepped up well with Seth Jones out of the lineup. I'm going to give Alex Vlasic an A-, even though it has been a bumpy last couple of weeks for him. Next, we go to Seth Jones, who's played in 28 of the 44 games this season, 3 goals, 12 assists for 15 points, minus 13 now on the year after being minus 4 last night, has scored 2 power play goals and 1 even-strength goal while averaging 24 minutes and 37 seconds of time on ice, top 10 in the NHL, and has chipped in with 49 blocks, 28 hits, and 13 takeaways. As I referenced when talking about Jones' struggles in segment 1, in the first half of the year when he was healthy under Richardson, I thought he was pretty good. Maybe not A-worthy, but he was in that B+, A- type of conversation, as I thought he was for each of the last 2 years. If you're someone who's regularly listened to the show, then you've heard me give Seth Jones high grades these past couple of seasons. And while the offense altogether, 15 points in 28 games on the year, that's the type of production we like to see out of Seth Jones. But the biggest thing I talked about him going into this year was just being sturdy defensively and creating a real top four for this Blackhawks team, bringing in Martinez and Brody. Felt like they had the real capability of being a strong defensive bunch for the first time since Jones has been here, and his defensive play has just taken a huge dip over these last couple of weeks. Since coming back from the injury, maybe he still isn't right. That doesn't seem to be the issue, though, from what Anders Sorensen told the media last night. But yeah, defensively, it just hasn't been good enough out of Seth Jones. I'm going to give him a C-. Next, we got Connor Murphy, 38 games played, 1 goal, 12 assists, 13 points. Currently out due to injury, of course, on IR, but has been dynamite when healthy. -4 rating. 38 penalty minutes is kind of my one critique on Connor Murphy, as he plays a similar role in situations to Alex Vlasic, but takes way more penalties than he does, but does block way more shots than Vlasic, does hit way more people than Vlasic. Same amount of takeaways, basically. The offensive metrics are up for Connor Murphy. Considering the lack of consistency we've gotten from Murphy these last few years, I love the consistency that we've gotten from him. Hopefully he'll be able to return soon and stay healthy. That's been another gripe for him. But I'm going to give Connor Murphy an A- for his performance in the first half. Next, we go to TJ Brody, 40 games played, 2 goals, 7 assists, 9 points, -18 rating. Hugely lopsided numbers in terms of 5-on-5 goals, 46 blocks, has only chipped in for 13 hits, only 6 takeaways. Considering what TJ Brody got paid, the role he had previously been playing, I know he's getting older, but he's down to 15 minutes and 54 seconds of time on ice this year. This is a guy who hasn't played under 20 minutes his entire NHL career. TJ Brody gets a D for his performance in the first half. Nolan Allen next, 37 games played, 1 goal, 7 assists, 8 points, -11 rating while averaging 15 minutes and 10 seconds of time on ice, 32 blocks, 47 hits. I should apologize to Mr. Nolan Allen yesterday. I said Wyatt Kaiser has more hits than he did. I misspoke. I misread those numbers. Nolan Allen does have more hits than Wyatt Kaiser, but it's not by a huge metric like you would expect for a guy who's physically mature, and Wyatt Kaiser is an undersized defenseman. Allen has 47 hits. Kaiser has 36. He is more physical than I originally thought. 7 takeaways as well. For being a rookie, he's handled himself really well going up against grown men, and he hasn't had those brutal turnovers or brutal nights like we've seen Seth Jones or TJ Brody have. So I've been happy with Nolan Allen, even though I haven't been the biggest Nolan Allen guy over the years. He's starting to grow on me a little bit more forcefully because he's just been so darn good at the NHL level and playing a simplified game. I'm going to give Nolan Allen a B. Last defenseman to get to, Wyatt Kaiser, 33 games played, 1 goal, 2 assists, only 3 points, -4 rating, 17 minutes and 44 seconds of time on ice. Bigger role than Nolan Allen, more block shots with 56, about as physical with 35 hits, more effective in stripping the puck away from opposing players, 15 takeaways, has some of the best analytics, which I'm not even an analytic guy, but I still think that's noticeable for Wyatt Kaiser and why he has to be in the lineup on a nightly basis. I'm going to give Wyatt Kaiser a B for his performance in the first half of the season as well. One surprise I wanted to get to before closing out today's episode, Blackhawks fans. I wanted to give out a grade to the front office because the Blackhawks are in such a terrible situation. Not only are they once again the worst team in all of hockey, which is a loss for the Blackhawks in the first half. My expectations were much higher than what the Blackhawks are doing right here, right now, and I'll actually be going over some of my bold predictions that I gave prior to the season later on in the week. But for the Blackhawks to be last place, for them to be not on television regularly, they still don't have a deal with Xfinity. For the United Center, by the way, United Center attendance, first time since April 2023. Last night, the Hawks drew fewer than 16,000 fans, smallest crowd of the season by far. I think that's going to be the case moving forward. And this sounds terrible of me to say, Blackhawks fans, but I hope it is the case. I hope people, and this kills me to say, I hope people stop showing up to the United Center because the message needs to be sent to not only Kyle Davidson that he needs to do a better job, and I know he wasn't eggs all in the basket of making this team competitive this year. He still has done an underwhelming job of putting together a team that can help Connor Bedard at least develop and get him out of a terrible state of mind and consistently losing games at a young age, which can plague a young player. He's done a bad job of that. I also just think, what have Chicago Blackhawks games become? Like, the atmosphere is just weird. I don't really agree with how they go about getting the crowd engaged. It just feels like it's the same thing night in and night out. It's nothing new. There's nothing creative. They don't do giveaways anymore, which I know a lot of people have mentioned that's something that's happened since Jamie Faulkner has stepped in. They're not giving fans literally any reason to come down to the United Center, except that it's like the only way you can watch this Blackhawks team, which at the end of the day, I don't know how many people really want to be watching this Blackhawks team. There's no giveaways. The tickets are still too expensive. Finally, they're starting to drop on the Game Time app, I'm noticing. Should have been that all season long. Last Saturday against the Edmonton Oilers, and I know it's Connor McJesus, who is worth the price of admission, I have said on the show. Cheapest tickets I could find that game on Saturday night was $80. I'm not paying $80 to go to the United Center and pay $12.50 for a beer for no promotion, no reason for the fans to come on down to the UC. It's all bad. From a Blackhawks front office perspective, they get a D for enticing these fans to A, watch this team. They can't even tune them in on TV. Tickets are too expensive. The concessions are super expensive. There's no giveaways anymore at the United Center. It's cold in Chicago. Like, what are we doing here? What is enticing Blackhawks fans other than Connor Bedard? Literally, what is enticing Blackhawks fans to watch this team other than Connor Bedard? I have to do it because it's my job. But man, it is getting tough out there, Blackhawks fans. So not only did I want to give the Blackhawks forwards and the Blackhawks defensemen a grade for the first half of the season, I wanted to give the Blackhawks organization, front office, and all of it a grade as well, because this is terrible. I mean, there's no upside here other than Connor Bedard and maybe the development of some of the kids that are on the scene. It is tough, Blackhawks fans. Make sure to let me know your thoughts about what I've been saying the last few minutes down in the comment section below, whether you feel the same way that I do. That's going to wrap up today's episode, though, of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast. That way, you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. Subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube as well to help me reach my goal of 2,000 subscribers. If you want to check me out on X, you can find me at Jack Bushman too, but make sure to follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, have a great rest of your Tuesdays, and I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.